The woman standing in front of the livery stable wore a dress too fine for traveling and carried desperation in her eyes that Wyatt Quinlan recognized from his own reflection most mornings. He had just finished loading supplies onto his pack-horse when she approached, her gloved hands clutching a small carpet bag that looked like it held everything she owned. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor he could see in her shoulders. "I overheard you telling the stable master you're heading west toward California. I need passage in that direction, and I can pay." Wyatt pushed his hat back and studied her properly. She was young, probably around 22 or 23, with dark auburn hair pinned up under a bonnet that had seen better days. Her dress, though quality fabric, was dusty and showed signs of hard travel. But it was her eyes that caught him, green as new grass, and filled with a determination that reminded him of a cornered animal that would fight its way to freedom. "Madam, I'm not running a stage service," he said, gentler than his usual manner. "This is rough country between here and California. Not fit for a lady traveling." "I'm aware of the difficulties," she replied, lifting her chin. "I've come from Missouri already, and I assure you I'm quite capable of managing hardship. I simply need someone who knows the territory, and I can compensate you for your trouble." Something in her tone made him pause. She wasn't asking for charity or expecting him to play gentleman. She was proposing a business arrangement, plain and simple. Wyatt had been drifting for 3 years since his family's ranch in Texas fell to drought and debt, and he'd learned to read people quickly. This woman was running from something, not just running toward a new life. "What's in California?" he asked. "My aunt has a boarding house in Sacramento," she said. "She's offered me a position helping her run it. It's honest work and a fresh start." "And what are you running from?" Her jaw tightened. "That's my business, Mr. Quinlan, Wyatt Quinlan." He glanced around the main street of Llano, Texas, watching the afternoon shadows lengthen. They were still in the early days of spring 1882, and the route west would be challenging but manageable if they started soon. "And you are Amelia Dalton." She extended her hand like a man would, direct and without coyness. He shook it, surprised by the firmness of her grip. "Miss Dalton, I'm going to ask you straight. Are you married? Is there a husband looking for you?" "No." The word came sharp and clear. "I was engaged, but I ended it. My former fiancé accepted this, but my family did not. They want me to reconsider, to go back to a life that would make me miserable. I won't do it." Wyatt understood family pressure and expectations that could suffocate. His own father had wanted him to stay and watch their land turn to dust, to die slowly alongside their dying cattle. He'd left instead, carrying guilt that still weighed on him but knowing he'd made the only choice he could live with. "I leave at dawn," he said finally. "I travel light and fast, and I won't slow down if you can't keep pace. You'll need a horse, not a wagon, and you'll need to dress for riding, not social calls. Can you do that?" Relief flooded her features. "Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Quinlan. Call me Wyatt. If we're traveling together for the next few months, might as well drop the formalities." He nodded toward the general store. "Get yourself proper clothes and whatever supplies you need. Meet me here before sunrise with a horse. Can you ride?" "I grew up riding," she said. "I can keep up." "We'll see about that." He tipped his hat and turned back to his horses, but he could feel her watching him for a long moment before she walked away. That evening, Wyatt sat in the saloon nursing a whiskey and wondering if he'd made a mistake. Taking on a traveling companion, especially a woman alone, would complicate things. But the money she'd offered was good. And if he was being honest with himself, the loneliness of the trail had been wearing on him. He'd been alone since leaving Texas, taking odd jobs and moving constantly, never staying anywhere long enough to form attachments. Maybe some company wouldn't be the worst thing. "You're the fellow heading to California," a voice said behind him. Wyatt turned to see a tall man with a marshal's badge, his face weathered and suspicious. "With the Dalton woman. News travels fast in small towns," Wyatt said carefully. "I got a telegram earlier," the marshal said, sitting down uninvited, "from a family in Missouri. They're looking for their daughter. Said she ran away from a good marriage prospect and might be headed west." "That's so." Wyatt kept his voice neutral. "The telegram said they're offering a reward for information on her whereabouts. Said they just want their daughter home safe." The marshal's eyes were sharp. "Said she's not in her right mind, making poor decisions." Wyatt had heard that story before. Families always claimed women who defied them were hysterical or mad. It was easier than admitting they'd tried to force someone into a life she didn't want. "Can't help you, Marshal," Wyatt said. "I'm traveling alone come morning." The marshal studied him for a long moment, then stood. "Be a shame if a pretty young woman got hurt out there in rough country. Sometimes people don't know what's good for them." "Sometimes people know exactly what's good for them," Wyatt replied. "And it's nobody else's business telling them different." The marshal left without another word, but Wyatt felt uneasy. If Amelia's family was serious about bringing her back, they might send someone after her. That would complicate the journey significantly. He found Amelia at the boarding house where she'd taken a room, knocking quietly on her door just after dark. She answered quickly, already dressed in the split riding skirt and practical blouse she must have purchased that afternoon. Her hair was braided down her back, and she looked younger and more vulnerable than she had earlier. "The marshal talked to me tonight," Wyatt said without preamble. "Your family sent a telegram. They're claiming you're not in your right mind, offering a reward for information." Her face paled, but her voice stayed steady. "I see. If we do this, we need to leave tonight, not morning, and you need to tell me the whole truth about what we might be facing." Amelia was quiet for a moment, then nodded and stepped back to let him into the small room. She moved to the window, looking out at the darkening street. "My father arranged my engagement to a man named Harold Peterson," she began. "Harold is 15 years older than me, a business associate of my father's. He's wealthy, respectable, and absolutely unbearable. He treated me like property he'd purchased, not a person he intended to marry. When I said I didn't love him, my father told me love wasn't necessary for a successful marriage." "But you disagreed," Wyatt said. "I watched my mother live in a loveless marriage for 24 years before she died," Amelia said, turning to face him. "She was miserable every single day, trapped in a life that slowly killed her spirit long before her body gave out. I promised myself at her funeral that I wouldn't follow the same path. When Harold started dictating what I could wear, who I could talk to, how I should behave, all before we were even married, I knew it would only get worse. So you ran. I told Harold I couldn't marry him. He was actually relieved, I think, but my father was furious. He said I was ruining his business relationship, embarrassing the family. He locked me in my room and said I'd marry Harold or be disowned." She smiled bitterly. "So I climbed out the window that night and took the money my mother left me, the only thing that was truly mine." Wyatt understood desperation and the courage it took to choose an uncertain future over a certain prison. "If we leave tonight, we'll be riding hard. It won't be comfortable." "I don't need comfortable," Amelia said. "I need freedom." An hour later, they rode out of Lano under a half moon, heading west into territory that stretched vast and unforgiving. Wyatt set a steady pace, not too fast to exhaust the horses, but quick enough to put distance between them and anyone who might follow. Amelia kept up without complaint, sitting her horse like she'd been born in the saddle. They rode through the night and into the next day, stopping only to rest the horses and refill their water. The landscape changed gradually from the green rolling hills around Llano to the flatter, drier terrain that stretched toward West Texas and eventually New Mexico territory. The spring air was cool but pleasant, and despite the circumstances, Wyatt found himself enjoying the companionship. "Tell me about California," Amelia said during one of their brief rest stops. They were sitting in the shade of some scrub oak, the horses grazing nearby. "Have you been there before?" "Once, about 5 years ago," Wyatt said. "I was helping drive cattle from Texas to the railroad in California. It's different from here, greener in some parts, mountains that make these hills look like anthills. The ocean's something to see too, if you've never witnessed it." "I've only seen pictures," she admitted. "What's it like?" "Big," he said, smiling at the inadequacy of the word. "Bigger than anything you can imagine. Water stretching to the horizon, waves that sound like thunder. Made me feel small in a way that was actually comforting, you know. Like my problems didn't matter much in the face of something that vast and old." Amelia was quiet, considering his words. "I think I'd like that feeling." "You running from your family or toward your aunt?" Wyatt asked. "Both," she said honestly. "My Aunt Martha is my mother's sister. She left Missouri 30 years ago after her own arranged marriage ended badly. She wrote to me after my mother died, told me I always had a place with her if I needed it. She's the only person in my family who understood wanting something different. Must have taken courage to write to her." "It took watching my father try to sell me like livestock," Amelia said, anger flickering in her eyes. "That gave me all the courage I needed." They rode for 3 more days, falling into an easy rhythm. Wyatt was surprised by how competent Amelia was on the trail. She didn't complain about the hard ground or the simple food. She helped with camp duties without being asked, could start a fire efficiently, and never slowed them down. In the evenings, they talked about small things at first, safe topics like the changing landscape or memories of better times. But on the 4th night, sitting around their campfire under a sky absolutely thick with stars, the conversation went deeper. "What made you leave Texas?" Amelia asked. She was wrapped in her bedroll, her braid falling over one shoulder, face golden in the firelight. Wyatt was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. He didn't talk about this usually, kept it locked away. But something about Amelia made him want to share it. "My family had a ranch south of San Antonio," he said finally. "It was small, but it was ours. 3 generations of Quinlans working that land. My father and I ran it together after my mother passed. Then the drought came, 3 years of almost no rain. We watched the grass die, the creek dry up, the cattle get thinner and thinner. My father kept saying it would break, that we just had to hold on a little longer. But it didn't break," Amelia said softly. "Not while we were there. We lost most of the herd. The bank was threatening to take the land. I wanted to sell what we had left and move somewhere with better prospects, maybe start fresh. But my father refused. That land was everything to him, represented our family history and pride. He'd rather die on it than let it go." "So you left," she said, not judging, just understanding. "I left," Wyatt confirmed. "Told myself I'd go find work, send money back. But the truth is, I couldn't watch it all die slowly, couldn't watch him give up everything for dirt that wouldn't support us anymore. I wrote to him a few times but never got replies. Don't know if he's still there or if the bank finally took it all. That must weigh on you." "Every day," Wyatt admitted. "But I couldn't stay. Same as you couldn't marry that man. Sometimes the only choice that lets you survive is the one that hurts." Amelia moved closer, settling beside him by the fire. "Do you think we're cowards for leaving?" "No," he said firmly. "I think we're human. And I think staying in situations that destroy us doesn't make us brave, it just makes us dead inside. She rested her head against his shoulder, a gesture that felt natural despite how recently they'd met. Wyatt didn't move away. The warmth of her presence was comforting in the vast darkness surrounding their small camp. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for taking me with you. For not sending me back when you could have collected that reward." "Money's not worth much if you can't sleep at night," Wyatt said. "Besides, I think I needed the company more than I wanted to admit." They sat like that for a while, comfortable in the silence. Wyatt realized he was starting to care about this woman, to look forward to their conversations and the sound of her laughter when something amused her on the trail. It was dangerous to get attached when they both had uncertain futures ahead, but he couldn't seem to help it. The landscape shifted as they continued west, becoming more arid and challenging. They were careful with their water, stopping at every creek and spring they encountered. Wyatt taught Amelia how to read the land for signs of water, how to tell safe camping spots from dangerous ones, how to watch the horizon for weather or trouble. She was a quick learner, absorbing everything he showed her with an intelligence that impressed him. She wasn't just running away from something, he realized. She was actively building herself into someone who could survive on her own, who wouldn't need to depend on anyone's mercy or goodwill. "My father always said women couldn't manage alone," Amelia told him one afternoon as they rode side by side. "That we needed men to make decisions for us, to protect us. But my mother managed the entire household, all the finances, kept everything running while he took credit for it. I used to wonder why she didn't just leave." "Fear, probably," Wyatt said. "Not of him necessarily, but of what being alone meant. Society doesn't make it easy for women to exist outside of marriage." "That's changing, though," Amelia said thoughtfully. "I've read about women in the West running businesses, owning property. My aunt has supported herself for 30 years. It's possible." "It is," Wyatt agreed. "But it's not easy. You'll face people who think you shouldn't have that independence, who'll try to take it from you." "Then I'll fight them," she said simply. "I've come too far to go back now." Her determination struck something in Wyatt's chest, a feeling he'd been trying to ignore but couldn't any longer. He was falling for this woman, for her strength and vulnerability, her intelligence and courage. It was complicated and probably foolish given their circumstances, but his heart didn't seem to care about logic. They were a week into their journey when they encountered their first real trouble. Wyatt spotted the riders on the horizon just before noon, 3 men moving purposefully toward them. His instincts immediately went on alert. "Amelia, stay close to me," he said quietly. "Let me do the talking." She nodded, her hand moving instinctively to the small pistol she kept in her belt. Wyatt had taught her to shoot a few days earlier, spending an afternoon on basic marksmanship. She wasn't an expert, but she could hit what she aimed at from a reasonable distance. The riders approached, fanning out slightly in a way that made Wyatt's hand rest on his own revolver. They were rough-looking men, the kind who lived on the edges of society taking what they could. The leader, a man with a scar running down his left cheek, smiled without warmth. "Afternoon," he said. "That's a nice set of horses you've got there." "They're not for sale," Wyatt replied evenly. "Didn't say I was looking to buy," the man said. His companions moved their horses wider, beginning to encircle Wyatt and Amelia. "Looking more for a trade. You give us the horses and any valuables and we let you walk away." "Not interested in that trade either," Wyatt said. He shifted his weight, ready to draw if needed. "We're just passing through, don't want any trouble." "Should have thought of that before traveling with a pretty woman through empty country," another of the men said, his eyes on Amelia in a way that made Wyatt's blood heat with protective anger. "Last chance to ride away peaceful," Wyatt said, his voice dropping into a tone that had sent smarter men packing. "Otherwise this gets messy for everyone." The scarred leader laughed. 3 against 1. I like those odds." 3 against 2, Amelia said, pulling her pistol smoothly and aiming it at the leader. "And I'm a very good shot." The men hesitated, clearly not expecting resistance from the woman. Wyatt used their moment of surprise to draw his own gun, covering the other 2 riders. "Now here's how this actually goes," Wyatt said calmly. "You 3 turn those horses around and ride away. If you don't, at least one of you is going to die, probably 2. Maybe all 3 if we're good enough and lucky enough. Is whatever you think you'll get from us worth that risk?" The scarred man's face darkened with anger, but Wyatt could see calculation in his eyes. He was weighing odds, and they'd just gotten a lot worse than he'd anticipated. "This isn't over," the man said finally. "Yes, it is," Wyatt replied. "Because if I see you again, I won't bother talking first." The 3 men turned their horses and rode away, but not before the leader shot a look back that promised trouble. Wyatt kept his gun drawn until they disappeared over the horizon. "We need to move fast," he said, holstering his weapon. "They might decide to circle back with more friends." They rode hard for the rest of the day, taking a more northerly route that would add time to their journey but hopefully shake anyone following them. When they finally made camp that night, Wyatt was exhausted but too keyed up to sleep immediately. "You did well today," he told Amelia as they sat by the fire. "Kept your head, backed me up. Thank you." "I was terrified," she admitted. "My hands were shaking so badly I wasn't sure I'd be able to pull the trigger if it came to it. But you drew your gun and stood your ground," Wyatt said. "That's what mattered. Courage isn't not being afraid, it's being afraid and doing what needs doing anyway." Amelia looked at him across the fire, her eyes reflecting the flames. "You've done that before, faced down men like that." "A few times," Wyatt said. "I try to avoid trouble when I can, but sometimes it finds you anyway. The West is beautiful and full of opportunity, but it's also got plenty of people who'd rather take from others than build something themselves." "Will they come after us again?" "Maybe," he said honestly. "But we'll be ready if they do, and every mile we cover puts us farther from danger and closer to California." She was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I feel safe with you, Wyatt. I want you to know that. Even with those men today, even scared, I felt like we'd be all right because you were there." Something in her words and the way she looked at him made Wyatt's heart beat faster. He moved around the fire to sit beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I won't let anything happen to you," he said. "That's a promise." Amelia turned toward him, her face close to his in the firelight. "I know," she whispered. Wyatt wasn't sure who moved first, but suddenly they were kissing. Gentle at first, then deeper as weeks of growing attraction finally found release. She tasted like the coffee they'd shared and something sweet that was just her. Her hand came up to rest against his chest, feeling his heart pound beneath her palm. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Wyatt rested his forehead against hers. "I didn't plan on this," he said quietly. "Neither did I," Amelia replied. "But I'm glad it happened." "This complicates things," Wyatt said, though he made no move to pull away. "You're heading to Sacramento to start fresh. I don't have any clear plans beyond California." "Then maybe we figure it out together," she suggested. "Maybe we don't have to have everything planned. Maybe we just see where this takes us." Wyatt kissed her again, softer this time, full of promise rather than urgency. "I'd like that," he said against her lips. "I'd like that very much." They held each other by the fire until it burned down to embers, neither wanting to break the moment. For the first time in 3 years, Wyatt felt like he'd found something worth staying for, worth building toward. Not a place, but a person who understood him and saw past the rough exterior to who he actually was. The next morning brought practical considerations back into focus. They still had a long journey ahead and potential trouble behind them. But something had shifted between them, a connection that made the challenges feel more manageable. As they rode, Wyatt found himself planning differently than before. Instead of just getting Amelia safely to Sacramento and then drifting on to the next thing, he started thinking about staying, maybe finding work in California and building something real. It was too early to voice these thoughts, but they were there, growing stronger with each passing mile. They crossed into New Mexico territory a few days later, the landscape becoming more dramatic with mesas and canyons cutting through the earth. The weather stayed cooperative, cool at night but pleasant during the day. They fell into comfortable routines, taking turns with camp duties and riding side by side whenever the terrain allowed it. Amelia continued to surprise Wyatt with her resilience. When they had to cross a flooded river, she didn't hesitate, trusting him to guide them across safely. When food ran low and they had to survive on jerky and hardtack for 3 days, she didn't complain. She faced each challenge with determination and an increasingly confident competence. "You're different than when we started," Wyatt observed one evening. They were camped in the shelter of some rocks, protected from the wind that had picked up as the sun set. "More sure of yourself." "I feel different," Amelia said. She was sitting close to him, their shoulders touching in what had become a comfortable habit. "In Missouri, I felt like I was always playing a role, being who everyone expected me to be. Out here, I'm just me. It's liberating and terrifying at the same time." "Who is the real you?" Wyatt asked. She thought about it, staring out at the vast landscape painted gold and red by the setting sun. "Someone who wants to be useful, who wants to build something meaningful. Someone who isn't afraid of hard work or challenges. Someone who maybe, possibly, is falling in love with a stubborn cowboy who makes her feel alive for the first time in her life." Wyatt's breath caught. They hadn't used that word before, had been dancing around it despite the growing intensity of their feelings. Hearing her say it made it real in a way that both excited and terrified him. "Possibly," he asked, trying to keep his tone light despite the emotion churning in his chest. "Definitely," Amelia corrected, turning to look at him directly. "I'm falling in love with you, Wyatt Quinlan. I know it's fast and probably not practical given everything we're dealing with, but it's true. You've shown me what it means to be treated as an equal, as a partner. You've never once made me feel weak or incapable. You trust me and respect me, and that means more than I can properly express." Wyatt cupped her face in his hands, his calloused thumbs gentle against her cheeks. "I'm falling in love with you too," he said. "Actually, I think I've been falling since you walked up to me in Llano with that determined look in your eyes. You're the strongest person I've ever met, and being with you makes me want to be better, to build something lasting instead of just drifting." They kissed as the sun disappeared below the horizon, and Wyatt felt something settle into place in his chest, a sense of rightness he'd been missing for years. This woman, this journey, this feeling was what he'd been searching for without knowing it. "What happens when we get to Sacramento?" Amelia asked later, lying in his arms under the blankets, the stars brilliant overhead. "I'd like to stay," Wyatt said. "If you want me to, find work, maybe save up to buy some land eventually, build something real with you." "I want that," she whispered. "I want everything with you." They made love that night with the tenderness of new lovers and the passion of people who'd found something rare and precious. Afterward, lying tangled together, Wyatt sent up a silent thanks to whatever fate had brought Amelia into his life. The next few weeks of travel were the happiest Wyatt had experienced in years. Yes, the journey was hard and sometimes dangerous. They dealt with difficult terrain, unpredictable weather, and the constant need to remain vigilant. But having Amelia beside him, building their relationship as they built their path west, made every challenge worthwhile. They talked about everything during those long days in the saddle. Amelia shared stories of her childhood, the good memories of her mother teaching her to read and encouraging her intelligence, even when her father disapproved. Wyatt told her about growing up on the ranch, the satisfaction of working with his hands and the connection he'd felt to the land despite how it ended. "Do you miss it?" Amelia asked one day. They were riding through Arizona territory now, the landscape stark and beautiful with strange rock formations rising from the desert floor. "The ranch, I mean. I miss what it represented," Wyatt said thoughtfully. "The idea of having something that was mine, that I was building and caring for. But the actual place, the drought and struggle and watching everything die. No, I don't miss that. I think sometimes we have to let go of what was so we can find what's meant to be. Like me leaving Missouri," she said. "Exactly like that. If you'd stayed and married that man, you'd have been miserable. You'd have the security everyone said you were supposed to want, but you'd have lost yourself in the process. Out here, you're becoming who you're meant to be." "We're becoming who we're meant to be," Amelia corrected. "Together." Wyatt reached across the space between their horses to take her hand, twining their fingers together. "Together," he agreed. They encountered other travelers occasionally, wagon trains heading west or fellow riders moving through the territory. Most were friendly, sharing information about water sources and trail conditions. Wyatt was always careful, never revealing too much about their plans or where they'd come from, but the interactions were generally positive. At a small trading post in Arizona territory, they stopped to resupply and rest the horses for a day. The proprietor was a weathered man named Jim who'd been running the post for 20 years. He took one look at Wyatt and Amelia and smiled knowingly. "Newlyweds?" he asked. Wyatt and Amelia glanced at each other. They hadn't discussed marriage, hadn't put any formal label on their relationship beyond knowing they loved each other and wanted a future together. But Wyatt found he liked the assumption, liked the idea of Amelia as his wife. "Not officially yet," Wyatt said carefully, "but heading that direction." Jim laughed. "Seen plenty of couples come through here over the years. You two have that look, the one that says you're building something real. It's a good thing to see." He paused, then added, "Fair warning, though, had a couple men through here about a week ago asking after a young woman traveling west. Said they were family looking for a runaway daughter." Wyatt tensed. "What did you tell them?" "Told them I see lots of folks passing through. Couldn't remember anyone specific," Jim said. "Didn't like the feel of them, truth be told. Had that look men get when they're hunting something. Figured whoever they were looking for probably had good reason to stay lost." "Thank you," Amelia said quietly. "That means more than you know." Jim nodded. "None of my business who you're running from or why. Just know that out here, we tend to respect people's right to make their own choices. You need anything while you're here, you just ask." They spent the afternoon at the trading post, resting in the shade and enjoying the luxury of a real meal Jim's wife prepared. But Wyatt's mind was working, calculating how close Amelia's pursuers were and whether they needed to change their route again. "They're not going to stop," Amelia said that evening. They were in the small room Jim had offered them, a genuine bed of luxury after weeks of sleeping on the ground. "My father is stubborn, and I embarrassed him in front of his business associates. He'll keep sending people after me." "Then we'll keep ahead of them," Wyatt said. "And once we get to California, once you're established with your aunt, it'll be harder for them to force you back. You'll have built a life there, have witnesses to your well-being and independence. You really think we'll make it?" she asked, vulnerability showing through her usual strength. Wyatt pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. I know we will. We've come this far together, faced everything the trail has thrown at us. A few hired men tracking us aren't going to stop what we're building. Promise me something, Amelia said, pulling back to look at him directly. Promise me that no matter what happens, no matter who catches up to us or what they threaten, you won't let them take me back. I'd rather die out here free than live another day as my father's property. It won't come to that, Wyatt said firmly. But I promise, Amelia, I won't let them take you. We're partners and I protect what's mine. If you'll have me if you want this, then we're in it together until the end. I want this, she said without hesitation. I want you. I want the life we're building together. When we get to Sacramento, I want to marry you properly, start our future the right way. Wyatt kissed her, pouring all his love and commitment into the touch. Then that's what we'll do. Sacramento, your aunt's boarding house, a proper wedding, and a life together. That's our destination now. They left the trading post before dawn the next morning, Jim sending them off with extra supplies and good wishes. The encounter had reinforced their urgency, but it had also clarified their commitment to each other. They weren't just traveling companions anymore or even just lovers. They were partners building toward a specific future together. The landscape continued to change as they pressed west, becoming even more varied and dramatic. They crossed high desert and pushed through mountain passes, always moving forward. The journey was hard on them and the horses, but everyone held up remarkably well. One afternoon, about 6 weeks into their journey, they crested a rise and Wyatt pulled his horse to a stop, pointing ahead. In the distance, barely visible through the haze, were the Sierra Nevada mountains, their peaks still snow-capped despite the advancing spring. California, he said simply. Amelia stared at the mountains, her eyes filling with tears. We're almost there. Almost, Wyatt agreed. He turned to look at her, this woman who'd come into his life asking for passage west and had instead given him a reason to stop drifting. Are you ready for what comes next? With you beside me? Yes, she said. I'm ready for everything. They descended from the rise and continued toward those distant mountains, both aware they were entering the final phase of their journey. The terrain would get more challenging as they climbed into the Sierras, but they'd faced worse together and survived. 3 days later, they were climbing the mountain passes, following trails that switchbacked through pine forests and along steep cliffs. The air was thinner and cooler, the landscape dramatically different from the Texas plains where they'd started. Amelia handled it all with the same determination she'd shown throughout, though Wyatt could see the exhaustion in her face. We'll rest more frequently, he said when they stopped for the night in a protected valley. The altitude affects people differently, and there's no shame in taking time to adjust. I'm fine, Amelia insisted, but she was breathing harder than normal and her face was flushed. You're tough as nails and braver than anyone I've ever met, Wyatt said gently. But you're also human, and humans need rest. We've come this far safely because we've been smart and careful. Let's not rush now and make mistakes. She nodded reluctantly. You're right. I just want to get there, to finally stop running and start building. Me too, he said, pulling her close. But a few extra days to do it safely won't matter in the long run. We've got our whole lives ahead of us. They spent an extra day in that valley, letting themselves and the horses recover. Wyatt used the time to check over their gear, making sure everything was in good condition for the final push. Amelia washed clothes in the small stream nearby and took stock of their remaining supplies. That evening, sitting by the fire, she suddenly laughed. What's funny? Wyatt asked. I was just thinking about what my father would say if he could see me now, she said. Dressed in men's clothes, hair in a braid, cooking over an open fire in the mountains. He'd probably have a fit of apoplexy. And my former fiancé, Harold, He'd be horrified that I was enjoying myself. "Their loss," Wyatt said. "You're magnificent exactly as you are." "I never thought I could be this happy," Amelia admitted. "Even with people chasing us, even with all the uncertainty about what comes next, I'm happier than I ever was in Missouri living that supposedly perfect life everyone wanted for me." "That's because this is real," Wyatt said. "Not some role you're playing or cage you're trapped in. This is you living authentically, making choices for yourself. That kind of freedom is worth any amount of hardship." "I wish everyone could understand that," she said softly. "That security without happiness is just a different kind of prison." They resumed their journey the next morning, refreshed and ready to tackle the remaining distance. The mountain passes were challenging but spectacular, with views that stretched for miles. Wildflowers were beginning to bloom, splashes of color against the green and gray landscape. As they descended the western slopes of the Sierras, the land began to green further. They started seeing signs of civilization more frequently, small settlements and farms carved out of the wilderness. Each one brought them closer to Sacramento and the life waiting there. "Tell me about your aunt," Wyatt said one afternoon. They were following a decent trail now, wide enough to ride side by side comfortably. "What should I expect when we meet her?" "Aunt Martha is wonderful," Amelia said, her face lighting up. "She's in her 50s now, never remarried after leaving her husband. She's blunt and practical, doesn't tolerate fools, but she has the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known. She'll love you." "How can you be sure?" "Because I love you," Amelia said simply. "And she'll see how happy you make me." "That's all she's ever wanted for me, to be happy and free to make my own choices." "I want to do this right," Wyatt said. "Meet her. Ask her blessing even though we're both adults who don't technically need it. I want her to know I'm serious about building a life with you, that I'll take care of you and respect you." "She'll appreciate that," Amelia said. "But honestly, Wyatt, you don't have to prove anything to her. She'll see who you are just by watching how we are together." They reached the outskirts of Sacramento on a warm afternoon in late May, nearly 2 months after leaving Leno, Texas. The city was bustling with activity, much larger and more developed than Wyatt had expected. Gold Rush wealth had built something substantial here, even if the easy gold was long gone. Amelia directed them through the streets to a substantial 3-story house on a tree-lined avenue. The sign out front read, "Davis Boarding House, respectable lodging for ladies and gentlemen." Before they'd even dismounted, the front door flew open and a woman rushed out. "Amelia," she cried, grabbing her niece in a fierce embrace the moment she was off her horse. "Thank God you made it safely. I've been worried sick since I got your telegram from Texas." "I'm fine, Aunt Martha," Amelia said, returning the hug just as fiercely. "More than fine. I want you to meet someone very important to me." Martha turned her shrewd eyes on Wyatt, who'd removed his hat and was trying to look respectable despite 2 months of hard travel. "This is Wyatt Quinlan," Amelia said, moving to stand beside him and taking his hand. "He guided me here from Texas, and somewhere along the way we fell in love. I know it's fast and unconventional, but Aunt Martha, I want to marry him. He's everything I didn't know I needed." Martha studied Wyatt for a long moment. He met her gaze steadily, letting her see his sincerity and commitment. Finally, she smiled. "Any man who could get my stubborn niece safely across half the continent has to be something special," she said. "Come inside, both of you. You look exhausted, and I want to hear everything about this journey." Over dinner that evening, with Wyatt and Amelia cleaned up and wearing proper clothes for the first time in weeks, they told Martha the whole story. She listened intently, occasionally asking questions, her face hardening when they described the men hunting Amelia at her father's direction. "Your father always was a stubborn fool," Martha said when they finished. "My sister deserved better than him, and I'm glad you had the courage to choose differently. As for you," she said, turning to Wyatt, "you have my blessing and my thanks. Anyone can see how you two feel about each other, and that's worth more than any arranged marriage ever could be." "I'd like to find work here," Wyatt said. "Make an honest living, save toward buying some land eventually. I want to build something lasting with Amelia." "There's plenty of work for a capable man," Martha said. "The city's still growing. Always need construction workers, ranch hands, freight haulers. And if you need a place to stay while you get established, you're welcome here. I have a small cottage out back I've been using for storage that could be fixed up." "We couldn't impose," Wyatt started, but Martha waved him off. "Nonsense. Amelia is the closest thing I have to a daughter. If she's getting married and building a life here, I want to help. Besides, I could use another set of strong hands around the boarding house. The place is getting too much for me to manage alone, even with Amelia's help." They spent the next few weeks settling into Sacramento life. Wyatt worked during the day, taking a job with a freight company that paid decent wages. In the evenings, he and Amelia fixed up the small cottage, turning it from a storage space into a cozy home. They painted walls, repaired the roof, and gradually furnished it with pieces purchased from second-hand shops or built by Wyatt himself. The work was satisfying in a way drifting never had been. Wyatt was building something tangible, creating a home for himself and the woman he loved. Each nail he drove, each board he measured and cut, felt like a promise to Amelia and to himself that this time would be different. This time he wasn't running from something, he was running toward it. Amelia thrived in Sacramento. She helped her aunt manage the boarding house, learning the business side of things and handling the bookkeeping with the mathematical skill her father had dismissed as unnecessary for a woman. Martha was teaching her everything about running the establishment, clearly preparing to eventually hand over more responsibility. "She's already talking about retiring in a few years," Amelia told Wyatt one evening. They were sitting on the small porch of their cottage, watching the sun set over the city. "She wants to travel, see some of the country she's missed while building this business. I think she wants us to take over the boarding house when she does." "Is that what you want?" Wyatt asked. "I think so," Amelia said thoughtfully. "It's good work, honest and respectable. We'd be providing a service people need and we'd be our own bosses. Plus it would give us a stable income while we save for land if that's still something you want." "I want whatever makes you happy," Wyatt said. "Whether that's running a boarding house in the city or eventually moving to a ranch somewhere. As long as we're together, I'm content." Amelia kissed him, soft and sweet. "I love you so much," she murmured against his lips. "Love you too," he replied. They set a wedding date for late July, giving themselves time to properly prepare and for Wyatt to feel more established in his job. Martha threw herself into planning, clearly thrilled to be organizing a celebration. She invited all her friends and regular boarders, determined to make it a proper affair. "Your father sent another telegram," Martha told Amelia one afternoon about a month after their arrival. Her face was serious. "He's demanding to know if you're here, threatening legal action if I'm harboring you against your will." "What did you tell him?" Amelia asked, her face paling but her voice steady. "I told him you're an adult woman making your own choices, and if he continues to harass you, I'll be the one pursuing legal action," Martha said firmly. "I also mentioned that you're engaged to a respectable man and building a good life here. He didn't respond well to that. Is he coming here?" Wyatt asked. He'd been helping move furniture in the boarding house and had overheard the conversation. "He threatened to, but I don't think he will," Martha said. It's a long, expensive journey, and your father has never been one to leave his comforts unless absolutely necessary. Plus, out here, he has no social standing or business connections to pressure you with. You're beyond his reach, Amelia, whether he accepts it or not. I hate that it has to be this way, Amelia said quietly. I didn't want to lose my entire family. But I can't go back, can't be who they wanted me to be. Then you don't, Wyatt said, taking her hand. You're building a new family here with Martha and with me. Sometimes the families we choose are stronger than the ones we're born into. The wedding took place on a beautiful late July afternoon in the garden behind the boarding house. Martha had decorated with flowers and ribbons, transforming the space into something magical. A local minister officiated, and about 30 people attended, mostly Martha's friends and some co-workers of Wyatt's who'd become friends over the past months. Amelia wore a simple but elegant dress Martha had helped her make, her dark auburn hair loose and decorated with small white flowers. Wyatt had purchased a new suit for the occasion, feeling more nervous than he had facing down armed men on the trail. As he watched Amelia walk toward him, smiling and beautiful in the afternoon sunlight, Wyatt felt his throat tighten with emotion. This woman had changed everything for him, had given him a purpose and a future. He'd ridden beside her from Texas to California, intending only to see her safely to her destination, but somewhere along the way, he decided never to ride away again. The ceremony was simple, but meaningful. When they exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through whatever came, Wyatt meant every word with his whole heart. The kiss that sealed their marriage was met with cheers and applause from their gathered friends. The reception was joyful, with food and music and dancing. Wyatt, who'd rarely had cause to dance in his drifting years, held Amelia close and swayed to the music, not caring if his steps were clumsy. She laughed and rested her head on his shoulder, and he knew he'd never been happier. "No regrets?" he asked quietly, just for her to hear. "Not a single one," she replied. "This, right here with you, this is everything I dreamed of when I climbed out that window in Missouri. You're everything I dreamed of, even when I didn't know what I was looking for. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me," Wyatt promised. "You already have," Amelia said, "just by being exactly who you are." They honeymooned in their little cottage, taking a week off from work to simply enjoy being married and alone together. It was blissful and intimate, a stark contrast to the 2 months they'd spent on the trail, always vigilant for danger. When they returned to regular life, everything felt different yet familiar. Wyatt went to work each day, gradually earning a reputation as reliable and skilled. His boss at the freight company talked about eventually promoting him to supervisor. Amelia continued learning the boarding house business, taking on more responsibilities as Martha began to step back. They saved money diligently, both working toward the shared goal of eventually buying land. Not to recreate what Wyatt had lost in Texas, but to build something new together. They talked about it on evenings sitting on their porch, imagining a small ranch where they could raise horses or cattle, maybe grow some crops, have space for the children they both hoped to have someday. About 6 months after their wedding in the early spring of 1883, Amelia told Wyatt she was pregnant. He swept her up in his arms despite her laughing protests, spinning her around in their small cottage. "A baby," he kept saying, wonder and joy filling his voice. "We're having a baby." "We are," Amelia confirmed, her eyes shining with happy tears. "Are you ready to be a father?" "I don't know," Wyatt admitted honestly. "But I'll learn same way I learned everything else important, and I'll love this child with everything I have same way I love you." The pregnancy progressed well. Amelia continued working at the boarding house with Martha's help, only slowing down in the final months when her size made moving around more difficult. Wyatt became even more protective, though he tried not to smother her independence. He knew his wife was strong and capable, had seen her prove it across half a continent. Their son was born in November, a healthy boy with a strong cry and his mother's green eyes. They named him Thomas after Wyatt's grandfather, with the middle name James after Amelia's mother Jane, modified to make it work for a boy. Holding his son for the first time, Wyatt felt something shift in his chest. All the wandering and uncertainty of his past finally made sense. He'd had to leave Texas, had to drift and search, because otherwise he never would have been in Llano that spring day when a desperate woman approached him about passage west. His whole life had been leading him to Amelia, to this family, to this moment. "What are you thinking?" Amelia asked from the bed. She looked exhausted but radiant, watching her husband hold their child. "I'm thinking about fate," Wyatt said. "About how sometimes the worst things lead to the best things. Losing the ranch hurt, but it brought me to you. If none of that had happened, we never would have met, and Thomas wouldn't exist." "Everything happens for a reason," Amelia said softly. "I believe that. All the pain and fear that got me to Texas, it was worth it because it led to you, to us, to this." Wyatt carried his son over to the bed, settling beside Amelia so they could both hold him. "I love you," he said. "More than I thought possible. You and Thomas, you're everything to me." "We love you too," Amelia replied, leaning her head on his shoulder. Life settled into new rhythms with a baby in the house. Wyatt balanced work and fatherhood, often staying up late at night when Thomas was fussy so Amelia could rest. Martha was an enthusiastic grandmother figure, constantly visiting and bringing gifts, teaching Amelia everything she knew about caring for infants. The boarding house continued to thrive under Amelia's increasingly skilled management. Even with a newborn, she kept the books balanced and handled the business side of things with impressive competence. Martha officially made her a partner in the business on Thomas's first birthday, beginning her gradual retirement. "This place will be yours someday," Martha told them over dinner that evening. "I'm putting it in writing, making it official. You've both earned it, and I want to know it'll be in good hands when I'm gone." "You're not going anywhere for a long time," Amelia protested. "Maybe not, but I'm 60 years old and feeling my age," Martha said. "I want to travel while I still can, see some of the world beyond Sacramento. Knowing you two are running things here will let me do that with peace of mind." "We'll take care of it," Wyatt promised, "and we'll make you proud." By the time Thomas was 2, Martha had indeed begun traveling, taking extended trips to San Francisco and other cities she'd always wanted to visit. Wyatt and Amelia fully ran the boarding house now, having renamed it Quinlan House at Martha's insistence. The business flourished under their management, gaining a reputation for cleanliness, good food, and fair prices. They'd saved enough to start looking at land outside Sacramento, small plots where they could build the ranch they'd dreamed of. But before they could decide on anything, Amelia discovered she was pregnant again. Their daughter was born in early 1886, a healthy baby girl they named Lily Martha, honoring Amelia's aunt. Thomas, now 3, was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to help care for her. "Our family is growing," Amelia said one evening. They were in the sitting room of the cottage, which they'd expanded over the years. Thomas was playing with wooden blocks while Wyatt held Lily. "We're going to need more space soon." "I know," Wyatt said. "I've been thinking about that." "What if we built a house on that land we looked at last year? It's only a few miles outside the city, close enough for you to still manage the boarding house but with room for the kids to grow up with space around them." "Like your ranch in Texas," Amelia said thoughtfully. "Not like it," Wyatt corrected gently. Better than it. Built by us together without the burden of past failures. A place for our family with water rights and good soil, room for the kids to run and for us to build something lasting. They purchased the land that spring, 20 acres with a creek running through it and good grass for livestock. Wyatt spent every spare moment building their house, enlisting help from friends and co-workers. It was hard work, but he loved every minute of it. This was his land, his family, his future taking shape board by board. The house was finished by fall, a solid 2-story structure with room for their growing family and the children they hoped to have in the future. They moved in just before Thomas's 4th birthday, all of them excited about the new space and possibilities. Martha returned from one of her trips to find them settled in the new house, the boarding house successfully running under a manager they'd hired while Amelia split her time between both places. "Look at what you've built," Martha said, standing on the porch and looking out over the property. "A real home, a family, a business. I'm so proud of both of you." "We couldn't have done it without you," Amelia said, holding Lily on her hip while Thomas played in the yard. "You gave me a chance when no one else would." "You gave yourself that chance when you climbed out that window and chose freedom," Martha corrected. "I just provided a destination. You and Wyatt did all the hard work of building a life together." Wyatt came to stand beside Amelia, wrapping an arm around her waist. Looking out at their land, their home, their children, he felt a profound sense of gratitude and peace. This was what he'd left Texas searching for, even if he hadn't known it at the time. Not just land or security, but purpose, family, love. "You ever think about writing to your father?" Martha asked Amelia gently, letting him know about his grandchildren. "Sometimes," Amelia admitted, "but I don't think he wants to know. He made his choice when he tried to force me into a life I didn't want. I made mine when I chose freedom and love. I'm sad we can't have a relationship, but I don't regret my choices." "No regrets," Wyatt echoed, thinking of that conversation on their wedding day. They'd promised each other no regrets, and 4 years later that promise still held true. The years passed peacefully. They had a 3rd child, another boy they named William, in 1888. The ranch grew along with their family, with Wyatt adding cattle and chickens, planting an orchard and vegetable garden. Amelia balanced managing the boarding house with raising their children, proving herself capable of handling both with skill and grace. Thomas grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved helping his father with ranch work. Lily was adventurous and fearless, always getting into something. William was gentle and curious, asking endless questions about everything he encountered, watching his children grow, teaching them to ride and work the land. Wyatt sometimes thought about his own father. He'd never heard from him after leaving Texas, didn't know if the ranch had survived or if his father was even still alive. It hurt sometimes, that unresolved pain, but Wyatt focused on being a different kind of father to his own children. He encouraged their interests, respected their individuality, and made sure they knew they were loved unconditionally. "You think they'll stay?" Amelia asked one evening. They were sitting on the porch as the sun set, a habit from their early days that they'd maintained through all the years. The children were inside preparing for bed. "Or will they leave like we did, searching for something more?" "Maybe," Wyatt said honestly. "But if they do, it won't be because we tried to force them into lives that don't fit. It'll be because we raised them to think for themselves and follow their hearts. That's all we can do." "You're a good father," Amelia said, taking his hand. "Better than mine ever was. Our children are lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one," Wyatt replied. "You and the kids, this ranch, the life we've built. I'm lucky beyond measure." Martha passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1893, having lived to see Amelia's family firmly established and thriving. She left the boarding house to Wyatt and Amelia officially, along with enough money to ensure their children's education and future. Her funeral was well attended, testament to the lives she'd touched and the respect she'd earned in Sacramento. "She saved my life," Amelia said at the service, her voice thick with emotion. "When I had nowhere else to turn, she offered me a home and a future. Everything I have, everything our family is, exists because she had the courage to live her own life and the generosity to help me do the same." After Martha's death, Wyatt and Amelia decided to sell the boarding house. It had served its purpose, providing them with income and stability when they needed it. But their hearts were in the ranch now, in the land and the animals and the growing operation they were building. They sold it to their manager, who'd proven himself capable and trustworthy, for a fair price that allowed them to expand the ranch further. By 1895, the Quinlan Ranch was well established and respected in the area. They'd built it into something substantial, a working cattle operation that employed several hands and turned a solid profit. The children were growing, Thomas now 13 and already skilled at ranch work, Lily 11 and passionate about the horses they'd begun breeding, William 7, and showing a talent for the business side of things that reminded Wyatt of his mother. "We did it," Wyatt said one evening. They were in their 40s now, gray threading through their hair, but still deeply in love after all the years. "Everything we talked about on that trail from Texas, we made it real." "We did more than that," Amelia replied. "We built a family, raised children who know they're loved, created something that will last beyond us. That's more than I ever dreamed possible when I asked you for passage west all those years ago." "Best decision you ever made," Wyatt teased. "Best decision we both made," Amelia corrected. "You could have said no, could have ridden away when the journey ended, but you stayed." "I decided that first night when we kissed by the campfire," Wyatt admitted. "I was never going to ride away again. You were it for me, the thing I'd been searching for without knowing it. Home wasn't a place, it was you." They kissed as they had thousands of times over the years, familiar and comfortable but still filled with love and passion. Wyatt marveled, as he often did, at how one moment of saying yes to a desperate woman in a dusty Texas town had changed the entire course of his life. The children grew and eventually began making their own paths. Thomas took over running the ranch, showing the same dedication and skill his father had. Lily married a horse trainer and started her own breeding operation on adjacent land they purchased for her. William went to college, studying business and law, with plans to help other families manage their properties and estates. Wyatt and Amelia slowly stepped back from the daily ranch operations, though they remained involved and interested. They'd earned their rest, though neither was content to fully retire. Instead, they found new ways to contribute, with Amelia getting involved in local women's organizations advocating for education and rights, while Wyatt mentored young ranchers getting their start. Did you ever imagine this? Amelia asked on their 25th wedding anniversary. Their children had thrown them a party, friends and neighbors gathering to celebrate. "When you were drifting around after leaving Texas, did you imagine ending up here?" "Never," Wyatt admitted. "I didn't let myself imagine anything back then. Just kept moving, afraid if I stopped I'd have to face what I'd left behind. But you changed that. You gave me a reason to stop, to build, to hope for the future. And you gave me freedom," Amelia said. "Not just by helping me escape Missouri, but by showing me what partnership really means. You never tried to control or diminish me. You let me be fully myself. "Because that's who I fell in love with," Wyatt said. "Strong, capable, determined you. Why would I want to change that?" They danced together as the sun set over their land, surrounded by family and friends, and Wyatt felt the profound contentment of a life well lived. Not perfect, there had been struggles and losses and hard times, but good, meaningful, filled with love and purpose. Years continued to pass. They became grandparents, delighting in the children their own children brought into the world. The ranch continued to prosper under Thomas's management. Lily's horse breeding operation gained regional fame for quality stock. William's law practice thrived, allowing him to help families across the state protect their lands and legacy. On their 40th wedding anniversary, now in their 60s but still vital and engaged with life, Wyatt and Amelia sat on the porch of the house he'd built with his own hands 4 decades earlier. Their great-grandchildren played in the yard, the next generation of Quinlans growing up on this land. "Do you have any regrets?" Wyatt asked, echoing a question from their wedding day so many years ago. "Not a single one," Amelia replied with the same answer she'd given then. "This life, this family, it's been everything. Every hardship we faced to get here was worth it." "I love you," Wyatt said, taking her hand in his. "Just as much as I did that first night on the trail, maybe more. You're still the best thing that ever happened to me." "And you're mine," Amelia replied. "The cowboy who rode beside me and decided never to ride away. Thank you for that, for all of this, for the beautiful life we've built together." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, hands clasped, hearts full. The journey that had begun with a desperate request in a Texas town had led them here, to a legacy that would endure for generations. The woman who needed passage west had found so much more than a destination. She'd found home, love, partnership, and a life beyond her wildest dreams. And the cowboy who drifted aimlessly had found his purpose, his anchor, his reason to finally put down roots and never ride away again. Their love story, born on a dusty trail between Texas and California, had blossomed into something extraordinary. Not because it was easy or perfect, but because they'd chosen each other every day, through every challenge and triumph. They'd built not just a ranch or a family, but a testament to what two people can create when they commit to facing the future side by side. As night fell over the Quinlan ranch, lights glowing warm from the house and laughter echoing from inside where their family gathered, Wyatt and Amelia knew they'd succeeded beyond measure. They'd taken a desperate gamble on each other in 1882 and turned it into 40 years of love, partnership, and shared purpose. Their story, their family, their legacy would continue long after they were gone, proof that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help, and sometimes the best thing you can do is say yes and never look back. The end of their riding days had been just the beginning of something far greater than either could have imagined. And as they rose to join their family inside, moving a bit slower than they once had but still hand in hand, they carried with them the certain knowledge that every mile of that long-ago journey had been worth it. They'd found what they were searching for in each other, and that had made all the difference.